Hello, it's your boy Asher, and we are going to be reading, How to Live With Yourself, a Guide, by PassionateAboutPonies. I personally really like this fanfiction. I'm not going to do spoilers, guys, but yeah, okay. If you want to read the summary, you can. I can just, pause it or something if you want to know. Just pause it and read it a little bit. Okay. This fanfiction is basically like I honestly really don't know how to explain this, but it's really good, guys. Trust. Okay. Tommy Watson was bored out of his mind. Nothing seemed to be holding his interest at the moment. He didn't feel like listening to music, audiobooks, or a movie. He wasn't in the mood to take a walk around the block or start a new knitting project. Rambo and Tubbo were busy with the Junior Hero program, and there wasn't even anyone in the house. The front door was open and shut, interrupting Tommy from his moping. He could tell it was Technoblade from his footsteps, and how he slammed the door. Bothering one of his brothers was as good as any activity, he supposed. Tommy got up from lying on his bed and went to head downstairs, only for Technoblade to try to head upstairs simultaneously. Tommy forced Techno to stop in front of him by blocking the stairwell. Techno sighed. "What do you want, Tommy?" Tommy shrugged. "I'm bored, and you're the newest and closest form of entertainment." "I thought I'd annoy you for a bit. Are you working on anything I can mess with?" "Not right now," Techno answered. "I just got off of patrol, and I'm exhausted. I need a nap before I can do anything else." Sorry, guys, I'm dyslexic. He gently nudged Tommy out of the way so he could go upstairs, but Tommy held firm. "Why do you always do that?" asked Tommy. "Do what?" Techno asked, still trying to get Tommy to move with minimum force. "This," Tommy answered, "treating me as if I'm made of glass. Actually, scratch that. I know why you do it, but I'm not going to fall over and shatter just because I'm blind. If I were a Wilbur, you would have already shoved me out of the way." Techno sighed. "I am too tired for this right now. Can we have this conversation after my nap?" "No," Tommy demanded. "You're not getting past me without actually putting in the effort. I demand equality in brotherly roughhousing." Tommy yelped as hands suddenly gripped his shoulders, his waist, and Techno threw him over the shoulder. "This isn't what I meant." He's so cute. He complained as Techno easily carried him up the stairs. "Too bad," Techno stated. He reached the top of the stairs and set Tommy back on his feet. "If you're still bored after my nap, we can go out and do something. In the meantime, whatever trouble you do choose to get into, make sure it's trouble you can get out of. And don't disturb me unless it's an emergency on pain of death." Techno entered his room and shut the door behind him. Tommy huffed. What was he supposed to do in the meantime? Probably what he did best, as Techno stated, get into trouble. He appreciated that Techno understood the futility of trying to control him and instead focus on minimizing the damage he did. Tommy racked his brain for something to mess with until Techno woke up. One thing immediately sprung to his mind: his dad's tech lab. His dad got most of the technology he used in his hero duties from work at the lab, but he still enjoyed tinkering with and customizing to his satisfaction. He also occasionally brought home a few personal projects. Was it a smart idea to play with stuff inside? Probably not. But his dad wouldn't have brought anything home that would hurt him, and he was really bored. I'd honestly probably do the same. Tommy grabbed his lockpicking tools from under his bed and headed to the lab door. Lockpicking was one of the few activities where the sighted and the blind were on equal playing fields, being conducted mainly through sound and touch. Tommy had gotten in a lot of practice over the years. Honestly, if his dad had really wanted to keep him out, he probably should have gotten better locks. In just a few moments, Tommy had the door open. He headed inside, not bothering to turn on the lights. He immediately tripped over a chair. Apparently, his dad had rearranged the room since he was last here. Tommy pulled himself to his feet using his dad's desk. Actually, the desk was probably a good place to start looking for something interesting. Tommy felt across the desk to see what was there. There were many papers, and he was about to give up and move on to somewhere else when his hand closed around something. He picked the item up. It wasn't very big or heavy. It felt like metal. It felt like a metal wristband with buttons on it. Therefore, to Tommy, the next logical step was to slide it on his wrist. My first step would be to press the buttons, guys. He immediately regretted his decision when it shrunk to fit him. He couldn't slide it back off. This might be a problem. Tommy couldn't exactly hide the evidence that he had been where he wasn't supposed to be if said evidence was stuck on his wrist. He yanked and yanked at it, but it was too small to fit past his hand. Tommy tried to suppress his rising panic as he considered his options. Option 1, call his dad, confess everything, and have him take it off. Also get grounded until his next birthday. Option 2, wake up Techno, confess to him, and have him try to take it off. He'd have to convince Techno not to snitch, and Tommy wasn't confident in his ability to persuade Techno of anything when he's unhappy about being woken up. Option 3, press buttons randomly and pray that he gets lucky. This might work, but it also might activate a distress signal or something else that would get him busted. Option 4, call Wilbur. Also, guys, I do not support Wilbur. I'm just going to put that out there, but he's in this fanfiction. I like the fanfiction. Yeah. But I do not support him in any way, shape, or form. Okay. Option 4, call Wilbur. Confess to him, get his help getting it off, and convince him not to snitch. Tommy figured he had a 50-50 shot of convincing him, so not his bad last resort. Option 5, somehow pry the thing off his wrist on his own. People dislocate their thumbs in movies to get out of handcuffs, right? This was practically the same thing. He could probably Google how to do it. After a quick Google search, Tommy decided that dislocating his thumb would be his second to last resort. This website he was on suggested soap instead, which was probably something he should have thought of in the first place, but he was panicking, okay? Tommy walked up to the bathroom and coated his wrist with hand soap before resuming trying to yank the thing off. Something strange happened then. Maybe the soap had gotten into somewhere critical. Maybe Tommy had pressed exactly the wrong buttons while trying to tug at the wristband. Maybe the device had reacted to someone handling an artifact in a different world. Maybe it was all or none of these things. The important thing is that there was a bright light and a loud noise, and then Tommy was no longer in the bathroom. Okay, and then we switched to Tommy 2 POV. Okay. Tommy Croft was very inconvenienced and very annoyed. The cause of his inconvenience and The cause of his misery was the massive snowstorm that raged outside the castle. He was itching to fly. Every bone in his body ached to take to the skies. But no, he had to be a prince of the Arctic Empire. Why couldn't he have been born to a prince of a tropical empire? Or the equatorial empire? I don't know. Sorry, guys. Stupid bird instincts, stupid snowstorm, stupid empire. Tommy moped as he trudged through the castle halls. He wanted the wind in his hair and feathers. Tommy moped as he trudged through the castle halls. He wanted the wind in his hair and feathers on the sun of his face. He wanted wind in his hair and feathers, the sun on his face. The itch that just would not go away, no matter how much he tried to ignore it. Maybe his dad would have some ideas, at the very least. If Tommy explained how desperate he was feeling, maybe his dad would let him fly in the dining hall or something. He just had to find him. Luckily, Tommy almost immediately spotted one of his brothers. "Wilbur!" he called out, running after him. Wilbur turned around and allowed Tommy to catch up. "Wilbur, do you know where Dad is?" "He's in a meeting in the East Wing," Wilbur replied. "Ugh, again? Is it the kind I can interrupt?" Wilbur shook his head. "Sorry, Tommy, it's full of council meeting. What do you need him for?" Tommy crossed his eyes. Tommy crossed his arms and huffed. I've got cabin fever. I can't. Tommy crossed his arms and huffed. I've got cabin fever, Will. It won't stop snowing. And I need to fly. I need to fly so badly, Will. It's driving me mad. I was hoping Dad would have a suggestion, or at least let me fly in the dining hall. Wilbur hummed and thought, and then grinned. I think I might have somewhere better than the dining hall. Follow me. He walked off down the hall, and Tommy followed him, intrigued. Where are we going? Tommy immediately asked. You'll see. Wilbur kept grinning. Tommy groaned again. Ugh, you're being cryptic. You're being all cryptic, Wilbur. You know I don't like it when you're cryptic. Just tell me. I'm imagining like a grandma doing that. Okay. Wilbur just shook his head. You'll see, he repeated. Tommy pouted but followed his brother without complaining farther. They walked nearly to the other side of the castle and stopped in front of a large set of doors. Tommy frowned. Dad said this was just storage. Wilbur grinned wider, pulling the key out of his pocket. Technically it is. He unlocked the doors and pushed them open, gesturing for Tommy to enter. Tommy did so. His mouth dropped open. The room was huge. Not only in length and width, but the ceiling stretched up even higher than the dining hall. Most impressive of all, tapestries of every size, shape, and color covered the walls. Whoa, what is this? He asked in awe. And why do you have a key? Wilbur entered and closed the door behind him. You have a special place in the castle that Dad let you have as only yours. How do you know about that? It's a secret, Tommy complained. Wilbur waved his hand around. Because this is mine. Techno has one too. So it's only made sense that you had one somewhere. I come here whenever I get overwhelmed or need a minute to myself. I have the only key. I haven't used it in ages, so I thought this was as good a time as any to share it with you. As you can see, there are plenty of spaces to spread your wings. Tommy looked around. Are you sure we're allowed to fly in here? Wilbur snorted. The tapestries are fabric, Tommy. The worst that could happen is we knock them off of the wall and they fall gently to the ground. Foreshadowing. Tommy grinned. He didn't need any more encouragement than that. He immediately spread his wings to their full width, and after a few wing bursts, he was up in the air. Tommy breathed a sigh of relief. The itching, nagging feeling disappeared instantaneously. He did several mid-air tricks, whooping loudly. He really needed this. Tommy stared down at Wilbur, who was watching him with a soft smile. He had a devilish idea. He dive-bombed Wilbur with no warning, causing the man to shriek and try to duck out of the way. Instead of crashing into him, Tommy tapped Wilbur on the shoulder and pulled him up. "Tag, you're it," he called, swooping back up to the ceiling. After Wilbur got over his shock, he quickly took off after his brother. "Oh, you asked for it, you little shit." He was smiling desperately. He was smiling despite his harsh words. The ensuing battle was a blur of gold and brown feathers, but neither brother would have had it any other way. Mid-air roughhousing had a sort of dance to it, a give and take. You wanted to mess with with the other person, but not actually knock them out of the air. It was something they had perfected after many years of airborne horseplay. Fortunately, both brothers focused far more on each other than the surroundings. Unfortunately, actually. Sorry, guys. Unfortunately, both brothers focused far more on each other than their surroundings. And to their surprise, they found themselves careening something into a wall together. I'm going to say barreling into a wall together. They might have been able to recover if the large tapestry they hit hadn't immediately come crashing down on top of them, dragging the brothers down with it. "Ow!" Tommy said simply lying on the ground, tangled up in the heap of fabric on top of one of Wilbur's wings. "I thought you said it would float down gently." "They didn't look heavy from the ground," Wilbur defended himself under the tapestry, somewhere to Tommy's left. "Can you get off my wing, please?" Tommy started trying to disentangle himself from the tapestry. "I would love to, Will, but I'm a bit stuck." "Well, get unstuck," Wilbur complained, pushing Tommy in an attempt to free his trapped limb. After a bit of wiggling and much complaining, the two managed to free themselves. After their predicament, Tommy looked down at the tapestry. What was this supposed to be, anyway? The tapestry showed three stylized figures. One looked like a human, one looked like an avian, and one Tommy had no idea what they looked like, having 6 arms and 4 eyes. Wilbur looked closer at the tapestry. I think this is one of Ellie. I'm going to butcher this name. Analia, the mage sage's work. "Who?" Tommy asked. Wilbur rolled his eyes. "You need to pay attention in your history lessons, Tommy. Analia was a royal advisor centuries ago. She had powers of prediction, but half of what she claimed to foresee was complete nonsense. The only reason they kept her around is the other half that usually turned out to be right. Judging by the person with 6 arms, this was probably one of her more eccentric predictions." "Huh," Tommy said, staring at the tapestry. "You know, they all kind of look like me." "In your dreams," Wilbur grinned. You have enough of an inflated ego without thinking you're part of some long-dead mad woman's prophecy. Come on, let's put it back up. He grabbed one of the corners of the tapestry. Tommy tore his eyes away from the figures and picked up the opposite corner. The two lifted the tapestry into the air, but there was a sudden noise, as if something had clattered to the ground. Tommy looked under the tapestry and saw something shining catch the light. He reached for the object and brought it out. It appeared to be an amulet composed of a red jewel surrounded by a gold border. The whole thing sparkled with enchantment. Huh? What's this? Tommy asked, turning it over in his hands. Wilbur looked over and frowned. I wouldn't play with it. It could be unsafe, especially if its Analia had anything to do with it. She was a notorious experimenter with magic. Maybe we should wait until Dad has a chance to look at it. Before Tommy could say or do anything in response, something strange happened. Maybe the amulet didn't take well to the fall. Maybe Tommy had accidentally activated it just by holding it. Maybe the amulet had reacted to something handling in a device in a different world. Maybe the amulet had reacted to someone handling a device in a different world. Maybe it was all or none of these things. The important thing is that there was a bright light and a loud noise. And the last thing Tommy heard was his brother screaming his name, and then he was no longer in the castle. Repetition, am I right? Maybe it was all or none of these things, guys. Okay. Let's see how much is left here. Okay, yeah, we can do this. I'm questioning which Tommy this is, but whatever. When Tommy woke up, he almost wished he hadn't. His whole body ached. It felt as though someone had squeezed him through a funnel or shoved him through a sieve and reassembled him out the other side. Tommy opened his eyes, and when he didn't recognize his surroundings, he suddenly remembered what happened. He picked up the amulet. Wilbur screamed. Okay, this is, avian, Tommy. Okay. Picking up the amulet, Wilbur screamed. A light, and then Tommy frowned when he couldn't remember anything else. That must be when he passed out. He pushed himself into a sitting position with a wince and looked around. It was a vast room filled with containers made of unfamiliar materials. The floor was made of stone, but he didn't recognize what type of stone either. Where in the world is he? I don't know, man. Maybe we're on a different world. He looked down to take stock of himself and noticed the amulet still in his hand. He lifted it to look at it with no small amount of apprehension, but it remained inert. Okay. Inert. It didn't look any different from before. The red jewel still shining, but with unknown enchantments. Tommy's best guess was that it had teleported him wherever he was, so it could take him back, right? Tommy shook the amulet. Take me back, please? He asked. Nothing happened. Tommy looked at the amulet from every angle and tried everything he could think of, but the amulet did not react. Tommy sighed. But even if it could take him back home, he had no idea how to work the thing. It was still his best lead, though, so he should probably keep it close. He placed the amulet around his neck and tucked it under his shirt. That would have to do for now. Tommy tried to decide what to do next. Wilbur would have immediately run for help, so his family would be trying to figure out where he went. He hoped they somehow knew where he was. He hoped they somehow knew he was okay. Why is that line giving me so much trouble? He knew they would be beside themselves with worry otherwise. Still, who knew how far he'd traveled, or if his family had any way to find him. He supposed his best bet would be to figure out where he was and find a way home based on that, or at least find a place to hunker down until someone came looking for him. Tommy stood gingerly wondering why weird amulet teleportation has such painful side effects. He stretched out his wings and, nope. He's walking. Tommy closed his eyes again and set out to get his bearings. He appeared to be in some enormous storage area. A warehouse, maybe? He decided to head for the nearest wall and follow it until he found a door. Suddenly he tripped over something. Or someone. This surprised him, as everything he'd seen so far had been stacked neatly. He turned around and were those legs? He tripped over someone's legs. He followed them with his eyes, and there was indeed an entire person lying on the floor, apparently unconscious. Surprisingly, still unconscious, as Tommy had basically stepped on the person. Accidentally? Yeah. Actually, were they dead? Tommy really hoped the person wasn't dead. That would not bode well for him. He walked around to get a better look at them and froze. He could see the person was breathing, but that was not what shocked him. The shock came from how familiar they looked. He knew the blonde hair, the lanky figure, and the face. He saw that face every day in the mirror. Somehow he was staring at himself. Ooh, cliffhangers, guys. Don't worry, I'll put up another chapter soon. Okay. Yeah. I'm just going to emphasize again. I do not support Wilbur. I support Shelby. At least I think that's her name. Honestly, I don't really have much to do with that side of the internet, really. I mainly like Tommy and Tubbo, Rombo, I haven't watched any of Shelby's stuff, but I support her against Wilbur. Honestly, I don't really support any of people doing stuff like that. Honestly, I think it's really cruel to just do something like that to someone that loves you. Wouldn't it really be the first time something like that has happened, though? So, anyway, tell me what y'all think about this, because I just think it's such a good one, guys. Like, honestly, I really don't know how to end this. Okay, but in the comments, I will make sure I respond to most of the comments, I think. But yeah. This is kind of the first fan fiction I'm reading, so I probably just did a pretty shit job about it. But whatever, guys. Don't judge. We listen and we don't judge, guys. Okay. Well, I'm going to stop talking now because I'm just embarrassing myself. Bye.